an eternal and profound grief that is personal to me and will not go away until I take my last breath. Your Honor, on behalf of the family of the late Robert F. Michelle West, please know that hundreds of people were affected by her life and saddened due to her death.
None of the victims deserve what happened to them. None of them asked for it. We just wanted everybody home for Thanksgiving. He was coming home for Thanksgiving.
And I hope you find in your heart that you can give him the longest maximum sentence. And I hope that he lives for a very long time and they make him suffer every night in there like he made our girls suffer.
Is this the face of a serial killer?
This case is growing bigger day by day. Khalil Wheeler Weaver may be responsible for the death of a 19-year-old. Khalil Wheeler Weaver had never been in trouble with the law until now, but neighbors of the suspect say they are surprised.
Sir, surprise is a loose word. I'm flabbergasted beyond belief.
Why do you do that?
State versus Khalil Wheeler Weaver.
A security guard at a ShopRite in Union Township said nothing in Judge Wiggler's courtroom as he was indicted.
It was her plea of not guilty on all charges.
Family is desperate for answers after a woman was found dead days after she went missing. 20-year-old Sarah Butler is from Montclair. Her Dodge Caravan was found in Orange. Her body later found at Eagle Rock Reservation in West Orange.
Sarah was last seen 2 days before Thanksgiving, right before a scheduled family trip to Jamaica. For over a week, her family and friends desperately prayed and awaited answers until her 2007 Dodge Caravan was found abandoned in Orange, followed by the gruesome discovery of her body inside Eagle Rock Reservation in West Orange yesterday morning.
I would like to say I do feel empathy for the victims, and my heart goes out to their families and friends. However, I was not, and I repeat, I was not the person who committed these crimes. And with that being said, I have clear and convincing evidence that I was set up, I was lied on, and I was framed by the Essex County Prosecutor's Office.
Him saying that he still didn't do it makes me feel like he has no type of remorse about it at all. Like he hasn't even shedded a tear about anything. So he's not sorry at all about what he did. And I'm over 100% sure it was him. He told me who he was.
Khalil Wheeler Weaver of Orange learned his fate yesterday. He was convicted in 2019 of murdering 3 women and trying to kill another. Prosecutors say he used dating apps to lure the women and then strangled them. He was caught after friends of one of the victims used fake social media accounts to lure him to police.
Sarah Butler's sister did something police should have done weeks earlier. She hacked into her missing sister's social media, found the man who'd been messaging her, and set a trap. Not with a badge, not with a warrant, with a fake profile and a whole lot of fear. And when that man walked into a Panera Bread thinking he was meeting someone new, detectives were waiting. Girl, if it wasn't for her and Sarah's friends, this man would still be out here. But by the time they caught him, he'd already killed 4 women. This is that story.
The badly burned body of Robin West was found inside this house after the fire was put out back on September 1st. She reportedly worked as a prostitute out of a hotel in Union Township and was from Chester, Pennsylvania.
Let me tell you something. Robin West was the kind of girl you just remembered. Born and raised in Philadelphia, she had nicknames for days. Her brother called her Ra. Her friends called her Sister, Twin, Family. At Sanctuary Church of the Open Door in West Philly, where she sang in the choir every Sunday, folks just knew her as Robin, or that pretty girl with the voice. She was vibrant, high-spirited, always laughing. But life wasn't easy for her. She struggled in school, struggled with her mental health, and by 18, she'd moved out on her own. Her mama, Anita, said Robin would talk about going back to get her GED from time to time. She was trying to figure it out, trying to find her way. By 2016, Robin was 19 years old, living a life she mostly kept from her family. But one thing she couldn't stop talking about, her 20th birthday. September 5th was coming up, and she was excited. She'd already posted pictures on Facebook of this white dress she planned to wear. Her friends said she couldn't wait to celebrate. Late August 2016, Robin and her friend Bernicia took a trip from Philly to New Jersey. They checked into the Garden State Motor Lodge in Union Township. Nothing fancy, just a budget spot about 15 miles from Manhattan. They were young, independent, trying to have some fun. But after a few nights, the money ran out, and they had nowhere to stay. So they came up with a plan to make a few dollars. On the night of August 31st, Robin and Bernicia found themselves walking near NY Avenue in Newark. They hadn't been out there long when a silver sedan pulled up. The driver offered to pay Robin for sex. Now, Bernicia wasn't about to let her girl just get in a car with a stranger without taking some kind of precaution. She pulled out her phone, typed the license plate number into her contacts, and saved it. Then she leaned toward the car and said, "Be careful with my sister because I love her." That was the last time Bernicia saw Robin alive. The next day, Robin didn't come back. She wasn't answering her phone, and Bernicia knew something was wrong. Robin would go off the grid sometimes, but never without calling. Never without checking in at some point. And not like this. Not miles from home after getting into a stranger's car. Bernicia had one clue, that license plate number. She called police immediately and reported Robin missing. She told them everything, where Robin went, what time she left, and who she left with. She gave them the plate number. But even with all that information, the response was slow. Like, real slow. Investigators didn't act like it was an emergency. They didn't rush to track the car. They didn't search the area where Robin was last seen. Days passed. No updates. No movement. No urgency. Meanwhile, Bernicia and Robin's family were calling every hospital, every precinct, every friend they had. And nobody knew that Robin was already gone. In the early morning hours of September 1st, just hours after Robin got into that car, firefighters in Orange, New Jersey, responded to a 911 call about a house fire on Lakeside Avenue. The place was already engulfed when they arrived, flames tearing through the windows, smoke pouring onto the street. It took time to get inside, but when they finally did, they found human remains. The fire had burned so hot that even seasoned investigators struggled to process what they were seeing. One of them later said it was the most destroyed body he'd ever encountered in his career. No ID, no phone, nothing that could tell them who this person was. And while firefighters were sifting through ashes and wreckage, Robin's family was still calling her phone, still sending messages, still hoping she'd walk through the door. They had no idea a body had been found. On September 7th, a full week after Robin disappeared, a detective with Union Township Police Department finally picked up her missing person case. He followed the one solid lead Bernicia had given them, the license plate number she'd saved the night Robin got in that car. When he ran the plate, it came back to a young man from Orange, New Jersey. Detectives went to his home and showed him a picture of Robin. And here's the thing, he didn't deny knowing her. He admitted he'd been with her the night she vanished. He said he saw her walking in Newark and offered her a ride because she wanted pizza. He said Robin asked if she could stay at his place, and he told her no, but he knew of an abandoned house in Orange where people sometimes stayed. He claimed he dropped her off there and never saw her again. He even offered to show detectives where he'd left her. But when they got there, it wasn't the house that burned. It was a completely different abandoned property. And because detectives still didn't know Robin had been murdered because they didn't have physical evidence tying him to her disappearance at that point, they let Khalil Wheeler Weaver walk away. Make it make sense. It wasn't until September 13th, more than 2 weeks after the fire, that DNA testing confirmed the body inside that burned house was 19-year-old Robin West. Her family was devastated. That white birthday dress she posted about, she'd never wear it. Her plans, her future, her whole life, gone. But even with the identification, investigators still didn't realize Robin's death was connected to anything bigger. At that moment, they thought they were dealing with one isolated tragedy. They had no idea this was only the beginning. While Robin's family was trying to come to terms with losing her, another family just miles away was about to start their own nightmare. Joanne Brown was 33 years old. Born in Augusta, Maine, she was the youngest of 7 siblings. Her sister and 6 brothers called her Billy Joe, a nickname that stuck with her for life. When she was 5, her family moved to Newark, and by 2016, Joanne was living in Jersey City. Life hadn't been easy. She struggled with her mental health and had been doing sex work to survive. She was doing what she could with what she had, but her family never stopped believing she deserved better. On the afternoon of October 22, 2016, Joanne was in Newark with a small group of friends. Just after 1 p.m., they stopped near a Popeyes on Avon Avenue, a spot they passed through often. Now, Joanne had a system. Whenever she left with someone, she always called her friend Amina. She'd say who she was with, where she was going, when she'd be back. It was a lifeline, a way to make sure somebody always knew where she was. But that afternoon, things played out differently. Another friend in the group needed to make an urgent call, and Joanne, always the helper, handed over her phone so she could use it. Moments later, a car pulled up. Joanne talked briefly with the driver, then got in. Without her phone, she couldn't make her usual safety call. But a few minutes later, around 1:30 p.m., she borrowed the driver's phone and called Amina. It was quick, just long enough to let her know she'd left with someone and would check in soon. That second call never came. At 3:09 p.m., Amina's phone rang. It was the number Joanne had called from earlier. She picked up immediately. "Is this London?" she asked, expecting to hear Joanne's voice or at least an update. Silence. Then the call disconnected. Amina called back 3, maybe 4 times. Each time the phone rang, no one answered. That silence told her everything. Amina reported Joanne missing, but Joanne's history worked against her. Officers noted her background, her struggles, the work she was doing to survive. And instead of sounding an alarm, they treated her disappearance like it was temporary, like she chose to leave. Amina tried explaining this wasn't normal, that Joanne always called, that something was wrong. But her concerns didn't move the investigation forward. No urgent searches, no press releases, no canvassing for days. Joanne's disappearance barely registered with authorities. And while Amina was making call after call, searching for any trace of her friend, Joanne's body was already lying inside an abandoned house on Highland Avenue, waiting to be found. Now, while Joanne's friends were desperately searching for her, another young woman just a few towns over had no idea she was moving toward the same threat. Her name was Sarah Butler. Sarah was the kind of person people just remembered. She grew up in Montclair, New Jersey, in a close, loving family that supported everything she did.
She loved to laugh. She loved to go. She was just free-spirited.
She was smart, creative, full of ambition, always planning her next move. She was a dancer. Her friends said she could walk into a room and express more with a single move than most people could with words. She loved the arts, loved performing, had this natural confidence that made her shine on stage.
Because if she's upset, she go right to the theater and she just dance.
In 2016, Sarah was a sophomore at New Jersey City University studying psychology. She lived at home her freshman year, commuting from Montclair to campus. But for her sophomore year, she decided to move into the dorms. Her family said she was excited about her future, excited about school. But friends noticed that after she moved on campus, Sarah struggled to make connections. She felt lonely sometimes. Still, she stayed close with her parents and her siblings, especially her older sister, Sione. She told her everything. November 2016. Thanksgiving break was just days away. On the first day of break, Sarah's mom, Laverne Butler, drove the family's blue Dodge minivan to Jersey City to pick Sarah up from school. Sarah was happy to be going home. She always was. The two of them spent the evening settling back into their normal routine. But later that night, Sarah asked if she could borrow the minivan for a little while. Before she left, she told her mom she was going to meet a friend. Laverne didn't think much of it.
She said, "Mom, I'm just going to say goodbye to a friend and I'll come right back." And I gave her my car key.
Did she tell you the name of the friend?
No, she didn't tell me the name of the friend.
Sarah was responsible. She checked in. She always came home when she said she would. But that night, Sarah didn't come back. She was supposed to return around 8 p.m. When she didn't, her sister, Sione, started calling and texting. No response. Sione started reaching out to people Sarah knew, friends, classmates, anyone who might have seen her. Nobody had spoken to her since she left the house. That night, she didn't come home. When Sarah's mom called her the next morning, she still wasn't answering. At first, Laverne hoped it was nothing. Maybe Sarah overslept, maybe her phone died. But as the hours went by and more calls went to voicemail, that uneasy feeling settled in.
I'm trying to call her phone. I know I'm getting angry with her because I know she needs to call me. Where are you, Sarah?
This wasn't like Sarah. She didn't disappear. She didn't ignore her family. By that afternoon, panic set in. No text, no call, no sign of her. And the van was still missing too. Sarah's mother reported her missing.
Then I started calling the police station.
The moment the report was filed, Sarah's family launched their own search. They retraced every place she might have gone. Montclair, Jersey City, everywhere. They called friends, classmates, co-workers. They drove up and down streets Sarah usually traveled, hoping they'd spot the van parked somewhere, hoping she'd suddenly answer her phone. The community rallied. They made flyers. They knocked on doors. They reached out to anyone who might have information. A close family friend who worked in public relations used her media contacts to push Sarah's story onto news sites and social platforms. Sarah's disappearance rippled through Montclair in a way that couldn't be ignored. And then came the first major break. A friend of Sarah's who'd been out searching on her own located the Butler family's blue Dodge minivan. It had been abandoned behind an old factory, left there quietly, like someone hoped it wouldn't be found. Police arrived at the scene. So did Sarah's sister, Tione, and one of Sarah's friends, Tafara Lamemba. Officers started looking over the vehicle, checking the windows, scanning the ground, searching for any sign that Sarah had been there recently. But they didn't see what was right in front of them. It was Tiona who noticed it first. A small flash of red on the ground near the driver's side door. A red hair extension. The same red hair Sarah had been wearing the night she disappeared. Before she could even speak, Tafara followed her eyes. Then Tafara screamed. She pointed to the hair, her voice cracking. For Sarah's family, that moment was shattering. Whatever hope they'd been holding on to started slipping away. They didn't need a detective to tell them something was wrong. They knew finding that hair extension meant Sarah wouldn't have walked away from her mother's van. They knew this meant danger, and they were right. Finding Sarah's red hair extension changed everything. It wasn't just a clue. It was confirmation that something terrible had happened. While police worked the scene, Tione and Tafara knew they couldn't just sit around waiting for updates that weren't coming fast enough. So they did what terrified families often end up doing. They began their own investigation. They drove straight to the Butler home and opened Sarah's laptop. Tafara knew her password. They logged into her email, her Facebook accounts, searching for anything that could explain where she'd gone and who she was with. Another friend, Samantha Rivera, joined them. Then they opened Sarah's Tagged account. Now, Tagged was this social networking and dating app that was popular back then. Users could create profiles, chat with strangers. But unlike traditional dating apps, it didn't have strong safety filters, which made it easy for people to hide their identities, create fake profiles, contact people they didn't know. Right away, they saw a recent conversation. Messages exchanged with a user named Lil Yacht Rock. It was one of the last interactions Sarah had before she disappeared. Samantha reacted immediately. She created a brand new tagged profile using someone else's photo and a fake name. She searched the app, and Lil Yacht Rock's profile popped up almost instantly. She clicked his page and sent him a simple thumbs up, just enough to get his attention. In the days after Sarah went missing, the women practically lived at the Montclair Police Department. They gave statements, waited for updates, kept pushing investigators to understand the urgency. And they were standing inside the station on November 26th when Samantha's Tagged account lit up with a message. It was Lil Yacht Rock. He offered cash for sex, said his name was Taj, insisted they meet quickly because he had to leave for work soon. Everything about the messages, the tone, the hurry, the money, felt off. Something was definitely wrong. The women didn't hesitate. The conversation escalated into a phone call. Samantha put the man on speaker, and Sione grabbed her own phone, opened the camera, and quietly recorded the entire conversation. They were still inside the police department, doing the detectives' work themselves. Eventually, Samantha agreed to meet him at a Panera Bread in Montclair, just a mile from the station. The moment she hung up, the women rushed to the officers working the case and told them they'd arranged a meeting. Police sent 2 detectives to the Panera instead. When the man behind the tag profile walked into that Panera Bread, detectives confronted him. He identified himself as Khalil Wheeler Weaver. They told him they wanted to speak with him because he might have been one of the last people to talk to a missing woman, Sarah Butler. He didn't resist, didn't panic, just agreed to go with them to police headquarters. At that moment, detectives were still treating Sarah as a missing person. They didn't know she was already dead, and because of that, their conversation with him wasn't recorded. He wasn't restrained, wasn't cuffed, wasn't treated as a suspect. He was free to leave at any time. But inside the station, he admitted he was the person behind the tagged username Lil Yacht Rock. Though he claimed the profile photo wasn't him, said it was his stepbrother. He explained that he'd created the account using an email address investigators would never forget. pimpkiller@ghostofyahoodoo.com. Like, girl, that's your email and nobody raised an eyebrow? When detectives asked about Sarah, he told a story. Said he'd met her because he recognized her from New Jersey City University and messaged her on Tagged. He claimed he contacted her because he wanted to see if she was using the app to solicit money for sex. He said on the night of November 22nd, Sarah picked him up from Orange Commons parking lot. According to him, she asked if he wanted to smoke and when. He said no. She got out to buy marijuana. He said they drove around after that, and eventually Sarah picked up another man. He claimed that because the 2 of them were smoking, he asked Sarah to bring him back to Orange Commons. He said he received a text from a friend named Richard Isaacs at 8:17 p.m., and Sarah dropped him off shortly after. He said the man who'd been in the back seat moved to the front after he got out. He told police he never saw Sarah again. A week later, on November 29th, he voluntarily took police on a ride to trace what he said was the route Sarah drove that night. He still wasn't under arrest. As they drove, he pointed out a car and claimed he and Isaacs had been working on it after Sarah supposedly dropped him off. At that moment, detectives still only saw him as a witness. Not a danger, not a predator, not the last person to see Sarah Butler alive. But they had no idea what was coming next. On December 1st, 2016, detectives tracking the last pings from Sarah's phone followed the signal into Eagle Rock Reservation, a wooded area overlooking New York City's skyline. It's the kind of place people visit for quiet moments, for the view, not somewhere anyone expected to find evidence in a missing persons case. That afternoon, officers searching the area came across something on the ground just off one of the trails. Within minutes, they realized it was a body. The location was secluded, hidden. Whoever left her there knew the spot was isolated enough that she might not be found for a long time. Investigators immediately secured the scene. They didn't confirm the identity right away, but Sarah's family was notified that a body had been found. And though they'd held on to hope, deep down they knew. A short time later, the body was identified as 20-year-old Sarah Butler. The autopsy confirmed the cause of death: strangulation. The search that her family and community had been leading for days was over. But the fight for answers? That was just beginning. After Sarah's body was found, investigators shifted their focus back to Khalil Wheeler Weaver. They started re-interviewing people connected to him, including his friend Richard Isaacs. At first, Isaacs claimed he and Wheeler Weaver had been working on cars the night Sarah disappeared. But when confronted with inconsistencies, he admitted he lied. He wasn't with Wheeler Weaver that night. Phone records told the real story. They placed Wheeler Weaver's phone near High Point Pavilion in Eagle Rock Reservation, the same remote area where Sarah was found, between 10:38 p.m. and 12:43 a.m. on November 22nd and 23rd. And the next morning, someone using his phone searched for ways to remove an Apple ID and factory reset an iPhone. Investigators later learned that months earlier, he'd Googled Eagle Rock Reservation. On December 6th, Wheeler Weaver was taken into custody. Police executed search warrants on his home and his car. Inside, they found gloves, black clothing, multiple phones. In his vehicle, they recovered zip ties, pepper spray, and a body fluid cleanup kit. The items painted a picture investigators could no longer ignore. When detectives confronted him again, he started changing his story. He claimed Sarah picked up another man, that they drove to the reservation, that they had sex, and then Sarah dropped him off. His version shifted every time detectives challenged him, but with Sarah gone and the evidence building, nothing he said could explain the hours his phone spent in the woods where her body was found. After Khalil Wheeler Weaver was in custody, detectives started digging deeper into his digital history. And what they uncovered, it made everything even more disturbing. Hidden in the messages on Sarah Butler's phone were conversations that showed she'd crossed paths with him days before she disappeared. Those messages revealed exactly how he operated. On November 19th, 3 days before she vanished, Sarah and the man behind the tag profile had already been in contact. The messages were blunt. He asked her, "Do you want to make money?" Then followed it with, "Sex for money." Sarah responded cautiously, asking how much. She ultimately replied, $500. Phone records showed he agreed to pick her up near her school in Jersey City, bring her to his house, then drive her back. Sarah asked him to pay her first. He told her he'd pay once they got to his place. And then, in a moment that now feels haunting, Sarah tried to lighten the mood. She texted, "You're not a serial killer, right? LMAO." He wrote back, "No." Sarah replied, "Okay, cool." The meeting never happened that night. She backed out, telling him later that she got really nervous. But on November 21st, the day before she disappeared, he texted her again. "What's up?" Sarah apologized for canceling plans. For investigators, those messages were significant. Not just because they confirmed contact, but because they revealed a pattern they'd failed to see sooner. A pattern that connected Sarah to 3 other women. While detectives were reviewing Sarah's messages and cell tower data, they started comparing what they were seeing to other open cases in the region. 2 stood out immediately: the murder of 19-year-old Robin West and the disappearance of 33-year-old Joanne Brown. At first glance, the cases seemed unrelated, different cities, different circumstances. But the digital footprints told a different story. Phone records, location data, message history, they all began revealing a pattern. And soon, detectives realized Sarah's case wasn't isolated. It was connected to other women who'd gone missing, women whose names had barely made the news. On December 5th, 2016, 4 days after Sarah was found, construction workers walked into an abandoned house on Highland Avenue in Orange. They were there to do repairs, but what they found instead was the body of Joanne Brown, who'd been missing since October. Her body was on the staircase landing. A jacket was wrapped around her face and neck. Duct tape covered her mouth and lower face. The medical examiner ruled her cause of death: mechanical asphyxiation. Phone records showed that on the day Joanne disappeared, October 22nd, the same number that contacted Sarah Butler had also called her friend, Amina, multiple times, and called Joanne herself. Location data placed that phone near the Popeyes where Joanne was last seen, and then at the abandoned house where her body was found. But it wasn't just Joanne. Investigators followed those same digital footprints back even further, to 19-year-old Robin West. Wheeler Weaver had been there the whole time, before Sarah, before Joanne. He was the owner of the car Robin got into that night. Police had spoken to him back in September. But even after her body was identified, he wasn't investigated or named a suspect. He just kept going. And had it not been for the actions of Sarah's sister and friends, who knows how long it would have continued. But now, 2 months after the murders first began, when detectives laid the timelines side by side, the phone records, the travel patterns, the victim's last known movements, the connections became undeniable. 3 women, 3 disappearances, 3 lives lost, all tied to the same man. And for the first time, investigators understood exactly what and who they were dealing with. In 2017, Khalil Wheeler Weaver was indicted on 3 counts of first-degree murder. By the time his case went to trial in October 2019, prosecutors had built a devastating timeline. Phone records, surveillance footage, digital messages, DNA, discoveries made inside abandoned houses, all of it pointed to him. But the most powerful evidence didn't come from devices or data. It came from the women who lived through encounters with him. One of those women was Tiffany Taylor. Tiffany took the stand and told the jury how she'd met the same man months earlier, after Robin and Joanne were killed, but before Sarah's murder. She described how he attacked her, how he restrained her, how he threatened her life, and how she managed to escape. Her testimony gave jurors a chilling look at the violence he was capable of. It showed the pattern prosecutors said connected all three victims. Other witnesses followed: detectives, forensic experts, phone analysts, the friends and family members who helped uncover what happened. Piece by piece, they laid out the story, how the victims were chosen, how the meetings were arranged, how the digital trail ultimately led police to him.
Is this the face of a serial killer?
This case is growing bigger day by day. Khalil Wheeler Weaver may be responsible for the death of a 19-year-old. Khalil Wheeler Weaver had never been in trouble with the law until now, but neighbors of the suspect say they are surprised.
Sir, surprise is a loose word. I'm flabbergasted beyond belief.
Why you do that? Why for?
State versus Khalil Wheeler Weaver.
A security guard at a ShopRite in Union Township said nothing in Judge Wigler's courtroom as he was indicted.
Against her plea of not guilty on all charges.
He was first picked up by authorities in early December.
Today we arraigned Mr. Wheeler Weaver on the indictment charging him with 3 murders and 1 attempted murder. And he entered his plea of not guilty. We scheduled a court date in May to continue the process and move forward towards a trial.
So let's.
2-547. As to count 1, charging the defendant with the murder of Robin West, what is your verdict?
Guilty.
As to count 2, charging the defendant with desecrating human remains of Robin West, what is your verdict?
Guilty.
As to count 3, charging the defendant with aggravated arson, what is your verdict?
Guilty.
As to count 6, charging the defendant with kidnapping, what is your verdict?
Guilty.
As to count 7, charging the defendant with attempted murder.
It was in December 2019 that Khalil Wheeler Weaver was found guilty of 11 charges, including murder, attempted murder, kidnapping, and aggravated arson. At his sentencing in October 2021, Khalil said they got the wrong guy. It's a frame job.
I would like to address the courts by saying that throughout the course of this whole ordeal, I have maintained and expressed my innocence vehemently until the day I continue to. The assistant prosecutor, Adam Wells, knowingly and purposely misled the courts and the families of the victims into believing that I was the person who committed these crimes. I would like to say I do feel empathy for the victims, and my heart goes out to their families and friends. However, I was not, and I repeat, I was not the person who committed these crimes. And with that being said, I have clear and convincing evidence that I was set up, I was lied on, and I was framed by the Essex County Prosecutor's Office.
He was sentenced to 160 years in prison.
An eternal and profound grief that is personal to me and will not go away until I take my last breath. Your Honor, on behalf of the family of the late Robert F. Michelle West, please know that hundreds of people were affected by her life and saddened due to her death.
None of the victims deserved what happened to them. None of them asked for it. We just wanted everybody home for Thanksgiving. He was coming home for Thanksgiving.
And I hope you find in your heart that you can give him the longest maximum sentence. And I hope that he lives for a very long time and they make him suffer every night in there like he made our girls suffer. Okay, thank you very much. I hope you suffer, boy, every night.
I also want to say, as far as him saying that he still didn't do it, makes me feel like he has no type of remorse about it at all. Like, he hasn't even shedded a tear about anything. So he's not sorry at all about what he did. And I'm over 100% sure it was him. He told me who he was.
It's 160 years with 145 years of parole ineligibility. The purpose of the sentence, again, is that this defendant never walk among society again.
The trial lasted 8 weeks. In the end, the jury heard enough. They convicted Khalil Wheeler Weaver on multiple counts, including the murders of Sarah Butler, Robin West, and Joanne Brown, as well as the attempted murder and assault of Tiffany Taylor. He was sentenced to 160 years in prison. But the story doesn't end there. As prosecutors were laying out their case, investigators revealed that the violence Wheeler Weaver was responsible for stretched even further than anyone initially knew. In 2019, 3 years after his arrest, construction workers discovered human remains in a wooded area in West Orange. Those remains were eventually identified as a 15-year-old girl who had disappeared back in October 2016, right in the middle of Wheeler Weaver's series of attacks. She had recently moved to the United States from Guinea and was living with her family in Newark, adjusting to her new life. Investigators later learned that, just like his other victims, she'd been contacted through the Tagged app. Digital evidence showed Wheeler Weaver reached out to her on October 7th, offering her money. Hours later, he messaged her again, giving her his phone number, the same number he used with his other victims. Not long after, he searched Google for directions to her apartment complex, then drove directly to the area. His phone's location data later showed a path from her neighborhood to the secluded spot where her remains were eventually recovered. And just like the others, she had been strangled. Her murder proved something investigators had already begun to suspect. Robin, Joanne, and Sarah weren't isolated cases. They were part of a pattern that included a child. After years of questions, on March 31st, 2022, prosecutors charged Khalil Wheeler Weaver with a fourth murder. His indictment didn't just accuse him of taking her life. It included charges of attempted sexual assault of a minor, endangering the welfare of a child, and desecrating human remains. It marked yet another devastating revelation in a case that had already shattered so many families. When this story finally came to an end, Khalil Wheeler Weaver had been convicted of murdering Robin West, Joanne Brown, and Sarah Butler, and later charged with the killing of a 15-year-old girl. 4 young women whose lives were cut short. 4 families left to grieve daughters, sisters, and friends they loved. And 4 cases that should have never required this much pain, pressure, or personal investigation to be taken seriously. Let me tell you something. These women were not invisible. They were loved. They had families who searched, who begged for help, who refused to believe their daughters simply walked away. But again and again, their fears were brushed aside. Robin West was written off because she wasn't from the area and because of assumptions about her lifestyle. Joanne Brown was dismissed before she was ever truly searched for. And even Sarah Butler, a college student with a tight-knit family, struggled to get quick and decisive action in those critical early hours. The most common thread wasn't their backgrounds. It wasn't their neighborhoods. It wasn't their choices. It was the way their disappearances were treated. Robin, Joanne, Sarah, they deserved protection long before investigators understood the danger. They deserved the kind of urgency that too often is reserved only for certain victims. Victims whose stories get more attention, more outrage, more resources. Their cases remind us of how much damage is done when assumptions replace action, when bias replaces urgency, when the most vulnerable women are the easiest to ignore. Every one of them mattered. Every one of them had family and friends waiting for them, and none of them should have slipped through the cracks. But here's what I need y'all to understand. It took Sarah Butler's sister hacking into her account to catch him. It took her friends setting a trap. It took regular people doing detective work because the system wasn't moving fast enough. Bernicia saved that license plate number and called police immediately. They had everything they needed to find Robin. And she still ended up dead. Amina called police when Joanne didn't check in. She knew something was wrong. And Joanne's body was left in an abandoned house for weeks. These families did everything right, and the system still failed them. Their stories deserve to be told, not because of the man who hurt them, but because of the world that failed to protect them, and because of the families who refused to stop fighting for justice when no one else was listening. That's why we say their names. That's why we remember their lives. And that's why their stories will never be forgotten. May Robin West, Joanne Brown, and Sarah Butler rest in peace.